Happy New Year, and welcome to the first New World Now episode for 2018. And this is also our first episode to air in our new time spot, which is Fridays at 11 a.m. Pacific on Unity Online Radio, which is the first place that the show airs before it goes up on iTunes. I'm really excited today to have my guest, Jennifer Louden, with me because rather than set the same resolutions that I've declared and not achieved for the last several years, like write my book and lose 20 pounds, I've decided to set only one intention for this new year, which is to embody and live from the feminine as fully as I can and in as many moments as possible. Jennifer is the author of a delightfully colorful, practical, and heart-expanding book called The Life Organizer, A Woman's Guide to a Mindful Year, which points us toward a more feminine, heart-based approach to goals and life planning that makes room for and even embraces chaos and interruption. Jennifer has a real gift for making timeless wisdom relevant for our modern times, and I love how her work and teachings so perfectly dovetail with the feminine awakening that's been happening in this country in the wake of Trump's election, with the Women's March, the Me Too movement, and most recently, Oprah Winfrey's powerful A New Day is Dawning Golden Globe speech. I've been very much looking forward to this conversation and the nuggets of wisdom that it's sure to provide. So welcome, Jennifer Louden, and thanks for being here.
I feel like I should start with a nugget of wisdom. I just don't have one.
I know you're full of them.
Thanks for having me, Kim.
Yeah, I'm so glad you're here. And I was surprised. I decided to Google and see how many people actually keep their New Year's resolutions. And the statistics I found was that as few as 8% of people actually keep them. So I would love to hear you. Do you explain why you think that is?
Oh, there's a ton of reasons. I mean, there's a ton of science now behind how we actually change as humans, and we change very incrementally and slowly. But there's also the fact that resolutions, they're detached from us is the feeling that I get. And they're usually far more, they don't fit in our lives. You know, you were saying that, we need to embrace chaos and the reality of life. And I often use a term when I'm teaching human scale life. And it feels to me like resolutions are sort of part of this whole rush to perfection or this desire to become almost machines. And instead of really looking at the fact that we're these bumbling, imperfect creatures whose attention is easily, squirrel goes from one place to another, and beginning instead to embrace that and plan from that place Instead, I think what resolutions do, they feel very top down, they feel very masculine, and they also feel really imbued with the word should. When you started that, I should write my book this year, I should lose 20 pounds. And one of the things that I love about the Life Organizer book and the work that I've developed in the years since that book was published is this idea of desire and also of devotion. And I think they fit more with how we really work and how our brains really work.
Yeah. And will you talk a little bit about the difference between the more common masculine approach to life planning and the feminine approach that you share in the Life Organizer?
Well, to me, the masculine approach, I don't know. I'm not a man. It probably feels really great to them. I have no idea. But it seems to have this sort of, I'm getting bigger and better every day. It seems to have this upward trajectory, and it seems to be very outcome-based. I'm going to get to this place and everything's going to be great. I'm sure that's way simplistic. But that's the feeling I get in my body when I think about sort of resolutions and goals. And what I like about the Life Organizer approach and some other ideas that I could share with you is that it starts with saying, what's my deepest desire here? What do I really want? And can I connect with that and feel that? And then look at ways to put it into action. And how can I be devoted to it? How badly do I want it? Am I willing to work on it? And how does that actually fit in the life I have now, which I think is extremely feminine? Traditionally, women have had lives that are interrupted multiple times. We've worked in the home. We're taking care of the kids. We're doing occupations through most of history until the last 50 years, 25 years that were also interrupted, teaching, nursing, etc. So we have we have an ability to work within that interruption if we embrace it. But I think if we embrace the masculine sort of more linear, and then this will happen, and then this will happen, and I'll get here, and everything will be great, that we can then really not work with our strengths, but also reject the truth of our lives.
Right. And then these ideas also apply to men too, since we both have masculine and feminine aspects within us, right?
Sure. I mean, I don't think there's one way to approach making our lives. I think the question is, how do I want to engage in making my life? I have a note card on my bulletin board in front of me. It says, every woman should be able to make what she wants. I mean, I really feel like that's at the core of all the work that I do. I want to give women whatever tools they need to help them make what they want, whether that's make a book or make health or make more pleasure in life or whatever it looks like, make more money so they're not worried about it. And that's what we're looking at for what tools can you make your own. And what I love about the Life Organizer approach is it is not cookie cutter, you make it your own. And I think maybe that's the feminine side or the rebel side of me who doesn't like to follow rules and tried to do like the, who's the guy get things done, David Allen, and tried like the email system for that and the this and that. And I'm like, oh my God, this is way too complex. This is way too many rules for me.
When I was home for the holidays in Indiana last year, and I was talking about how grateful I am to work at a place like New World Library that's helping to shift consciousness on the planet in a more positive direction, my dad challenged me to explain what shifting consciousness means in a way that he could understand. And it was something I struggled with in the moment for sure. And when I read this excerpt that I want to share from the Life Organizer, I was truly impressed by how you so eloquently give words to the process. You write, "This book is my attempt to name and give a form to one way of living that I see emerging. It's a way of living in tune with what is, aware you always have a choice in how you react and what thoughts you believe. It's a way of living where paying attention to your inner knowing and intuition is as important as logic and to-do lists. It's a way of navigating life that embraces imperfection while heeding your true desires, where enoughness is your benchmark and delight and saving thread through it all. Most of all, it's a way of living rarely more than a breath away from the astonishment of the marvel of simply being alive." I just love that so much. And I wanted to ask you specifically about enoughness, because this is one of my power words for 2018. I'm really moving into not wanting to change myself, just accepting myself where I am. And so I would love to have you explain what you mean by enoughness and how we can begin to embody it in our day-to-day lives.
Well, to me, it was a profound realization a number of years ago that if I don't declare what is enough for me, and I mean that in really practical ways, I'll talk about in a sec, I will always feel dissatisfied. And then contentment and satisfaction lives outside of me in some place I'm going to arrive or something I'm going to accomplish, because I very much am a driven person, always working with that. It's never going to be enough. And that enoughness is absolutely a declaration that I have to make over and over again in really specific ways. And it was tied to my experience many, many years ago being on Oprah and not having it go the way I wanted, not getting what I wanted out of it. And slowly, really it took me years afterwards, to discover that I was really hoping that Oprah would say to me in some way, some fashion, yes, you're enough. Yes, you're fabulous. And so, of course, that's never going to happen, because it's absolutely up to me. It's absolutely up to every single one of us to discover and declare over and over again what enoughness is. And it's an ongoing day-to-day game. And so it looks like maybe declaring for me right now, I'm working on a memoir, and it looks for me declaring how many hours will I write, because I'm doing a lot of rewriting right now versus drafting, so when I'm drafting, it might be how many words am I going to write? So it's very arbitrary, but I say, that's what's going to fit in my my life today? And just that kind of practice makes you say to yourself, oh, but wait, I'm sure Stephen King is writing more words because Stephen King writes 1,500 words every day while he's listening to heavy metal music, and I better write that. And you get a question and go, where? That's that choice moment again. This is my life. What am I choosing today? Of course, you can do it in the gym. I became a runner a couple of years ago when I moved here to Colorado. And so enoughness can be reflected. Oh my gosh, that's a huge practice for me about how many miles I run and, how slow oh God, there's so many things there because I want to be as fast as my husband, which is never going to happen since he's 6 foot tall. So it's a practice of declaring for ourselves and knowing that there's many times when it's not going to feel comfortable because it really is a practice of pulling it back into ourselves over and over again. And some of it is so subjective, Kim. What is enough for intimacy? Like if I decide that intimacy with my beloved is because we have incredible sex and I just feel like the universe opens, woo, I can't control that. It may happen, it may not happen. But if I can decide intimacy is bringing my mind and my heart back to that moment instead of off in my head or wishing things to be different, that I can control. That can be enough. And so it's a deeply practical and actually a deeply spiritual practice as well. And we can look at it in money. We can look at it in our parenting and all these areas where there's a lot of noise and a lot of other people's stories about what it means to be enough.
Yeah. And can you speak to the relationship between that state of enoughness and declaring enoughness and our goals and desires, which seem like they, by definition, revolve around wanting something more?
Yeah, that's a great question. Yeah, so there's a lot of misinformation and mistranslations about desire, both in Eastern Buddhist paths, yogic paths, and also in Christian paths. Really, desire, it's built into us. Well, you and I would not be sitting here if it wasn't for desire. Two people desired each other, and there along came us, right? We wouldn't be having this radio show if somebody hadn't desired it, if you hadn't decided you wanted to do it. Desire is what makes things happen. But what we want to work with, which directly comes into enoughness, is we want to work with how hooked we are into the particular specific outcomes and how much we think they define who we are as people. That's the place we want to work. So we actually want to cultivate a relationship with our desires, which is really hard for a lot of women, Kim, because as you said, just the Me Too movement alone points to just one way of so many that culturally having desires as a woman has been dangerous and or thwarted. So even just having a relationship with our desire, really allowing ourselves to know what we want, can be huge for people. An exercise I do at all of my retreats, which are mostly writing retreats now, I ask people in their free time when we're not in scheduled writing sessions to be asking themselves, what do I really want? What do I want next? What do I want to eat out of this buffet? And many people, for them, it's a life-changing because they don't ever take the time to really ask. Either life is too programmed or fast, or they're taking care of everybody else. But it's not then that we get attached to, I'm going to get that desire, I'm going to publish that book in exactly that form, and it's going to be successful. That's where we get hooked and we move away from enoughness because it's outside of ourselves. It's not within our influence or our control.
Yeah, and timing too, right? Divine timing can be a real bitch sometimes.
Yeah, or
so it's not saying I'm going to reach this goal by this date in this way. It's more, this is what I want, and letting it come as it comes.
Actually, I'm going to make a little bit more specific distinction. I wouldn't even say that. It's about allowing ourselves to want and to delight and focus on the action we can take. And to keep looking at the fact that, of course, we want this outcome or we want this thing, but we keep bringing our attention away from it. It's really none of our business. And there's a nice field. There's quite a bit of research right now that shows when we focus on the goal or the outcome, we actually lose motivation to take action until we get pretty close to the edge. So I'll use running a race. In the beginning of October, we ran some trail races in Utah. I'm using the word race very loosely, right? It's slow. I came in the 30th percentile for my age. But one day was 14 miles, and these are trail races, so they're pretty, up and down, and it's rough. And then the second day was 17 miles. And to think about the end of that race while I was in mile 3 or mile 7 or mile 10 would kill me. But when I was wow, I think I see that we're getting around the bend there. When I hear people cheering, then it's very motivating. So we're human. We want things. We want it to look a certain way, but we have to kind of keep bringing our attention back to what is it about the action I'm taking right now that is fulfilling and interesting to me and challenging.
Yeah, and that's great. And that's a great segue because I want to go through the 5 steps for life organizing that you offer in the book, which you can use to plan a week, a day, or even the next few moments, you say. Mm-hmm. And I'd love to go through each one individually because I think they're each such valuable standalone practices as well. And together they're really powerful. And the first step is to connect. And by that, you mean to connect with our bodies, right?
Yeah, we're just these giant heads that float around, We work in this virtual world, most of us on computers. We forget that we have this thing called life coursing through us. So if there's one thing that you get out of this conversation, everybody who's listening, is just a few times a day, whenever you have a choice, whenever you don't know what to do next, whenever there's a transition between one activity and the next hasn't started, take a moment to connect. Maybe it's just to put if you saw me right now, I just put my hand on my heart. Maybe it's just to feel your breath. Maybe it's to stretch and wiggle and just remember you have a body. Maybe it's to taste something, drink some water and really feel it. That's all I'm talking about. Not intellectual, with your body.
Yeah. I love the ear love one that there's tons of really cute, simple ideas in the book. And one of them is just to give your ears some love and massage your ears. I love that.
Yeah,
one.
Because there's all these nerve endings in your ears. So it's actually very calming for your nervous system and your brain. Rubbing your arms is very calming for your mammalian brain. So if you're feeling anxious or shut down, can't think creatively, you're tired, rubbing your arms, giving yourself a little hand massage.
Yeah, there's so many great ideas in there. And then after we've kind of gotten into our bodies, the second step is to feel, which is all about activating our heart energy. And you say that one way we can do this is to remember a moment in which we felt how we want to feel now. That we tell us a little bit about that and the importance of the heart.
Yeah, there's a body of work called heart math, and there's a lot of science behind it, and there's controversy around it. So maybe scientifically it won't hold up, but I still really love this part of the practice, and that is to take, about 60 seconds. That's what we think it takes to change the signals coming from your heart brain. You actually have a bunch of neurons in your heart, and they send signals up to your cranium brain. And when we're stressed, when we're not feeling enough, those signals, those electrical impulses from the heart brain to the cranium brain can get really jagged, and they can really affect your thinking, what parts of your brain can come online and what parts can't. And so just take 60 seconds to remember a happy time or, a pleasant time, vacation, and really feel yourself there. Imagine yourself there. Try to bring your senses into it if you can. No need to strain. Or how you'd like to feel right now, if that feels available to you, can calm and change that energy. So if we put you in I think it would actually be I can never remember how to say this, EKG, we could see that that electromagnetic energy changing its shape from your heart brain to your cranium brain, and it would have influence in, again, what's available to you to choose, to think, to take action on.
Yeah. And then the third step is to inquire. And you say that the questions that we ask ourselves influence our thoughts, and our thoughts influence our mood, and our mood influences what we believe is possible. And you give a lot of amazing examples based on different situations in the book of what to ask. And I'm curious, what are your favorite big questions to inquire about?
Oh, I love questions. This whole book has good questions, right? I like something like, what I've been playing with lately is what thought just jerked me out of the moment. It's not a very elegant question, but just to kind of reflect on, especially since I've been writing is hard for me. So I'll notice I was enjoying myself. I was really in the scene, and suddenly I'm out here beating myself up. What was the thought? What was the moment? So that's an inquiry I'm really liking. I love one of the questions in the book. What is this moment calling forth from me? That's really great with my husband or my daughter. She's 23. It's that whole transition between being a kid and being an adult. We're finding our way. What is this moment calling out from me when I'm with her? Is it calling out for me to be a mom or a friend or just an interested listener? And then, of course, what do I want? What do I want right now? What do I want? Like, I just made lunch before this, and I'm like, what do I want for lunch? Do I really want what I thought I was going to have? Let's get curious about that. And people can be like, I don't have time for that. That's fine. But those moments that we choose and we get comfortable with our desire can then have a big influence on the bigger desires and dreams that we want to go for.
And I've really been working with is this really what I want right now question too. And it's definitely a different answer if you take the time to go into your body and in your heart when you ask it, because your mind wants the quick fix right away. So it's definitely interesting when you take the time to really connect and then ask the question how the answer can be different.
That's absolutely right. I have a membership website, and I make an audio every week, and it has these kind of practices in it. We do different meditations, and then I give them questions, prompts like these, and people either think about them or they try to do. Usually, they'll do free writes with them, and that's exactly what they report, which is if they just ask themselves the question, it's kind of flat, or the first thought that occurs to them is the same old thought. But if
I want the chocolate,
exactly, the chocolate, I want the new purse. But if you take a moment for we do poetry and meditation, etc., then it's the same thing. It's opening up other sources of wisdom beyond this first thought. So that top of mind is how I think of it.
Yeah. And then the fourth step is to allow, which I understand is not resisting what is. It reminds me of an Eckhart Tolle quote: to offer no resistance to life is to be in a state of grace, ease, and lightness. Can you talk a little bit about how allowing factors into life organizing?
Yeah, so this is the hardest one for me, just to be really super honest, because you have to pause. So really another word for allow is pause. So I did this minute or two of feeling my body and feeling into a happy memory and asking myself a question. And what we want, because of the pace we live at and technology and the way our brains are sort of hijacked a lot of the time, is we want an answer. We want to know what to do right then. And we want it to be laid out, super linear and absolutely 100% guaranteed. But that's not how life works. So we're trying to give ourselves time to do the best we know how in every moment. That's all we're up to here. We're not up to getting it right or doing it best or making $1 million in the next 10 minutes. We're up to how can I give myself the chance to bring more of me online and be more mindful and intentional in this life that I'm making moment by moment. And so allowing is maybe hanging out for 30 seconds. It's listening for an impulse, an idea, an image even. And if it doesn't come, no problem. Do something anyway, which is our last step.
Which leads us to the last step, which is apply, and which is putting the wisdom that came through the first 4 steps into action. So what advice do you have for the apply step?
Well, what I see happen a lot with women I work with, and so I'm always trying to counter this in different ways with my suggestions, is that we really are good maybe at listening. We're really good at planning. We're really good at making vision boards, but we're not so good at taking action. But we become who we want to be only through action. Yes, all this other stuff is super important, but until we actually make it real in the world and get some feedback, there's no completion, and there's usually no real learning. There's no real growth. So apply is take action, do something, and maybe do a few somethings, and then ask yourself, what do I know now? What do I see that might be the next step? Or maybe go back and repeat the process again. But without action, nothing changes. And it's so trite to say, but it's so overlooked. We just want to skip that step because that's where we really are vulnerable. That's where we really put our desire into action.
Yeah. And one of the things I most appreciate, as I mentioned in the intro about your work, is how you really make wisdom and practices accessible in our daily lives. And I noticed on your website that you share that one of your daily rituals is always planning your day the night before. Mm-hmm. And I'm curious if you use the 5 steps for that and kind of what that looks like when you do it.
Yeah, sometimes I will. Mostly, it'll look like first looking at my calendar and going, well, what's on there today? What's already taken up? How much time do I really have? And then looking at well, what are the desires that I really have? Like right now I'm working on the book. I'm working on a presentation for Creative Live. I'm getting ready to teach a retreat in Mexico next month. So like, okay, these are the desires that I have, but what's really practical? What's really possible? What's human scaled versus like what I wish would happen? Because Kim, for years, what I would do is plan my day aspirationally. Oh yeah, no problem. I'm a superhuman who can work 10 hours straight thinking and planning and writing and teaching without a break. And yeah, that's really going to happen. Of course, it never, ever, ever happened. So I think the check-in that I mostly do on a day-to-day basis is just really that kind of wrestling between what's possible, given my energy level, given my commitments for the day, given the life I really want to lead. So it's really a desire-based wrestling. And then it looks like, making some blocks of time on my calendar for what's most important that has to happen, and then filling in the rest, using a to-do list app that I like. And then as I go through the day, that's usually more where I'll do a check-in. Like, wow, I really don't want to do this. It's time to write. I don't want to write. Well, what would it look like if I checked in and could find that feeling of desire again for writing?
Yeah. Not powerful. And we have about 30 seconds or so left. And I wonder if you have any just parting words of wisdom or encouragement for those of us who are intending to start a new practice or our year off on the right foot.
Yes. Start small and start with something you really want. Tap into that desire, even if it freaks you out, and make it so small and so clear what you're going to do for that practice, that no matter what happens that day, you will do it.
Oh, I love it. And the time has skipped right by. I can't believe it. We're at the end already. But thank you so much for being here and for just the amazing work that you do in the world.
Oh, Kim, thank you so much. It's really good to reconnect.
For more information about Jennifer Louden and the Life Organizer, visit her online at jenniferlouden.com. And I'd also like to invite you to join the New World Now podcast community on Facebook, where you can be a part of discussions about current episodes and stay up to date on the latest and greatest podcast news. Simply search for New World Now podcast on Facebook to join the group. I hope to see you there and look forward to connecting on future episodes of New World Now.
Thank you for listening to New World Now with Kim Corbin from New World Library. New World Library publishes books and audios that inspire and challenge us to improve the quality of our lives and our world. For more information about their books and authors, you can visit them online at newworldlibrary.com.